There's blissfulness in ignorance. Will I be free once I forget this pain? Welcome to the second episode of Conversations with Myself. Here, we will be discussing freedom and forgetfulness and how they may link to each other. I wish to be blissfully ignorant, forgetful. I want to forget all the suffering of those around me, of myself, of my past. These were some of the thoughts I had when I was thinking about making this episode. I was thinking, how can I relate forgetting and freedom? And this idea also came from a reality in which my country is involved in and which my country is living. There's also the personal reasons people may want to forget something, but we'll get into that later. I'm from Colombia, and in my country, we have been facing a period of internal military conflict for more than 50 years already. Lately, in the light of an improving political environment and in a desire of the people to create a consciousness, a memory, a record of all the pain this conflict has caused, a commission for truth, or commission of truth in Spanish, it would be Comisión de la Verdad. This commission was created. It aims, the commission, to compile and tell all the events and the facts and the testimonies of the people which have been victims of all these years of internal conflict in Colombia. Telling the truth and remembering, that's the purpose of this commission. In remembering the story of this conflict, freedom comes through. The freedom for the truth to be told. This means there's a freedom given to those people that have been victims. In this specific case, freedom doesn't come from forgetting. Freedom doesn't come from avoidance. Freedom comes through remembrance. Not showing the truth would mean those who committed the crimes would retain their freedom, their power over these victims, their oppression. Not showing the truth and forgetting would be to commit a crime against the victims, would be giving freedom to those who made the harm. Remembering, for us, remembering as a nation, give us freedom. This commission for the truth allows our country to not forget. It gives us the freedom to start anew, to hold onto history and learn from it. Forgetting the truth, hiding this truth, forgetting the past, would mean we as a nation would be imprisoned in our ignorance, in our forgetfulness of our past, of the violence we have been victims of. In this specific case, I would say refusing to forget, fighting for remembrance, rather than forgetting, brings freedom to the victims and brings freedom to us as a nation. The experiences the people tell and their testimonies which have been recorded in the Commission of Truth, which I will link in the description of the podcast, can also be true for a lot of people around the world, because trauma can reach us all unexpectedly. And I must clarify, I'm not a psychologist, and I would love to talk more about trauma and its effects with a friend who is actually a psychologist. I think it would be really interesting. But I feel that for a lot of people, in a lot of cases, suppressing the memories of pain could help them at least get through to certain periods suppressing the memories of the pain, of the harm that they have been victims to, could help them traverse through their lives for a while and maybe go beyond trauma. Although I do believe at one point we must come and face it. Then again, I feel like this boils down to the individuality of the person. Forgetting may seem to be a way to deal with the problems for some people, while remembering might be the go-to way for people to do so. What's important here is how we tackle forgetfulness in order to free ourselves burdens that we have been victims to, the pain, the fear. Switching to a slightly lighter note, less harsh, though I wanted to begin stating the importance that remembrance has in war, in conflicts, in trauma, in violent cases, because that's not something that we should forget. Those things shouldn't go undocumented to the public. Losing our collective memory is what leads for more conflicts to arise, and forgetting the violence committed to one person may lead for that crime and that violence to be continue being perpetrated against other people. So there's a lot of value in remembering so that we may be free to continue forward. But on a lighter note, shameful experiences, which all of us have experienced, is also something that we struggle and we try to forget. For example, having to speak in public and maybe stuttering. Like, for example, for me, I try to forget a lot of the times when I record this because it feels weird and I'm ashamed of it. I struggle with it, but I'm working on it. I'm trying to bring you guys better content. So being in public and stuttering, telling someone you like them and being rejected, that hurts, that makes you feel ashamed. Falling while you're walking, among a lot of other examples that this happens in our daily lives. Like when you see someone waving their hand and you think they're waving towards you and they're not, they're waving to the person behind you. Those feelings, those scenarios in which we feel shame and we don't want to do them again because we're afraid something similar will happen. In these cases, these scenarios aren't necessarily trauma-inducing. Forgetting these experiences may allow us to be free to try again, to go again to the person you like and tell them that you like them, to give it another try to speak it in public. But in these cases, we don't forget the experience per se. We are more forgetting the emotions we felt. We try to forget the fear and the shame, and we forget them and we're willing to risk feeling them again. And it actually becomes sort of a cycle. And at one point, we won't necessarily be forgetting them. Rather, we will just be accepting them and moving on with our lives. At the start of the podcast, the phrase, "I wish to be blissfully ignorant," which is a phrase that has stuck with me a lot because I think about it. I think how not knowing brings us freedom. I have been thinking and I've talked about it with some of my friends that I think everything went wrong in my life once I took my first philosophy class. Because knowing how a lot of the things work, knowing how the world works, how the human mind works, how injustice works, it changes you as a person, and it weighs on the soul, it weighs on the mind, and you actually have to work to deal with it. Or well, at least that's my case. I feel like I have a lot of sensitivity towards the people around me. I was using public transit the other day, and it's the public transit here in the city. It's really congested. There's always a lot of people. And I saw this little girl. She had to be at least 5 years old or less. She was extremely young. She was a baby. And she boarded this bus all by herself. And I couldn't help but think, how is this kid so young here in this public transit bus at 8 o'clock in the morning with all these people around them? I was so concerned, like the chances of her getting lost, something happening to her. The city is not necessarily the safest. It really struck me, and it has stuck with me. It left a mark, and I can't seem to forget. I wish I could forget. I wish I forgot knowing all the people that need help, all of the things I could do to help them, all of the injustice that a lot of people are victims to. But then again, if I forget, how will things get better? But maybe by forgetting those things, I would actually be happier. If I think about it, maybe I would actually be more relaxed. Maybe I wouldn't worry too much about everything, since I'm blissfully ignorant. I don't mind the pain. I don't mind the pain. I don't mind the suffering. I don't mind the struggle. I don't mind anything of it. I'm just being me. It's just my thing. But then I think that being like that also leads to indifference, which I just think is worse. You are purposely forgetting instantly about the struggles of your peers and of the society you live in. I feel that nowadays, this ignorance is voluntary because we have access to the internet, we have access to news all the time, every second, every hour. So not knowing or deciding to avoid these topics is voluntary. It's a decision people make. It's an avoidance that they are consciously taking in order to lead calmer lives. They're not worrying that people are dying on the streets, that children are being abused, because they don't care. It leads them to be happier. There's a lot of things that people will just deny because it burdens their minds, like war, illness, homelessness, even climate change, something that's not even that controversial, but it is there. It is there, and people just decide to ignore it because why should I worry about it? It will only make me feel bad. It will only make me worry. I'll rather just forget about it and be free to continue on with my day. Here, I feel like this freedom that they feel is so fake. It's fake. It's a fake freedom because by forgetting about the others and the way the world needs changing means nothing will change and the things will get worse. And eventually they will have to face it. I feel to me that there's a lot of indifference in the world. And there's a lot of forgetfulness. People forget to be kind, to be caring. And yeah, this may increase their personal freedoms. They wouldn't necessarily need to worry about giving charity, helping helping the kids in need when you're asked in the supermarket. I'm not telling you to do that. It's just people just ignore those things. They choose to forget about it because it's not convenient, because it restrains them. It doesn't make them feel free. If I could just go out into the world and not worry about the war, the conflict, the people dying, the poverty, the insecurity. If I could just go out and ignore all of that, I would feel immensely free. I wouldn't even feel part of the society. People search for freedom they want to be free from the angst of the society in which they live. They ignore the violence in order to feel lighter. The only thing they remember, and they remember it fondly, is their youth. But they forget about tomorrow. And I feel like that's the biggest thing we have been struggling with as a society, and most recently us. We forget about tomorrow. So we remember so much the past. We remember the history, we remember everything. But we forget that we need to act today to make a change tomorrow. We need to remember about tomorrow so that nothing that happened before may happen tomorrow. We need to take into consideration all of the victims of trauma, of the injustice in our society, and remember them. We need to remember what they have gone through. And we need to remember that tomorrow those things could still happen. Those aren't things of the past. Because people say that, oh no, that only happened before. Or that doesn't happen here in the city, it happens somewhere else. That's indifference. That's neglectfulness. And we should remember to care about tomorrow by holding its relevance in regards with the past. We have to make a connection between all three of them, the past, the present, and the future, and understand that we can't just forget about tomorrow. So we struggle because we forget about tomorrow rather than forgetting about yesterday. And there's no change in the past, but we can always change the future. Thank you so much for listening to this episode of Conversations with Myself. I would love if you guys could tell me everything you think in the comments, and if you're listening to this on Spotify, I would love that you tell me everything you think via YouTube in the YouTube comments, or just DM me on one of my socials, and I promise I will search even more about this topic because I find it really fascinating, and maybe even do a second episode about it with another friend, and we can talk about trauma. And yeah, I feel like it has a lot of potential, but this is just something I wanted to tell you for now. So yeah, don't forget. It may be tempting to forget because life weighs heavy on us. But if we forget, we're not gonna be able to change the future. We need to learn from the past and from everything we have been through in order to help things improve. And thank you so much for listening, and I hope to see you in the next episode.